Hey, Marcy, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you unmute yourself now? I just want to make sure I have the settings right. If you can hear me, hoping. So, Marcy, do you have a microphone? Okay. Hey, Sandy.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good. I go turn on my light.
Totally forgot. You just want to sit by me and watch or what? That's fine. Not using the school board one? It's small. No. I'm old. I can't see. Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, whoops.
Hi, Layson.
Hi.
Hi, Jackie. Jackie, are you able to hear us? Just want to make sure.
Yes, I can hear you. Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, it was a little choppy there, but I can hear you.
Yeah, it's kind of windy out here and I keep losing connection.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think I'll be okay. I can probably hear you better than you can hear me.
Okay. I heard you good there, so that'll be okay, I think.
Get my couple computers here.
Oops. It doesn't ding me when they. All right.
Hello.
Hey, Carrie, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am well, surviving.
Good. Surviving.
And Polly, you're able to hear?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And then Quinn's still getting in here. Quinn, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. For some reason, am getting an error when I go to share my screen, so you might just need your agenda. It's saying it's failed to start. Please try again later. Not sure what's going on there. So I think just Quinn, or not Quinn, Ken. I saw Quinn's face and said his name. Huh. I don't know why. It keeps popping up an error with the screen share. So I guess we'll just have to look at the agenda on our own.
How are the girls doing, Quinn?
Oh, he's muted. There you go.
Yeah, he is. I can't hear you.
I can unmute him. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the girls are doing
now
good.
you can- Good, good. Helps with the weather and being nice.
It does. They play a lot outside.
Good.
All right, Ken said he's signing in now. I'll try one more time to share my screen. Oh, it just keeps giving me an error.
Want to get out and in again?
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it.
Okay.
If it's working, we're just gonna go with it. Yeah. Raylyn is joining in. Ken needs the link. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, there's a good Zoom meeting YouTube we could watch while we're waiting.
Yeah, if I could screen share it, I would.
I know. It's pretty good. I'll have to share it with you anyway sometime just so you can laugh a little. Oops.
Oh, there he is. All right, we'll get in. All right, he's there.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Ken.
I can.
I'm sorry, I was on the telephone and time just like disappeared. I'm not sure. Oh, plus who knows even what day it is?
I
Quinn,
don't
what day is it? Come on.
either.
I mean, seriously. Only okay, I know because it was Easter
Yeah,
yesterday.
that's about our saving grace.
So I see we have a quorum,
Yep.
I guess, so we can get started.
Yeah, and I'm not able to share my screen, Ken, so I'm hoping you can bring up the agenda in front of you. I keep getting an error when I go to share my screen.
Yeah, I had it here just a moment ago.
Excuse me.
Um,
Myself on mute.
okay, so do you want me to try and share this or?
You sure can. Let me make sure I have that setting right, that other people can share it. Oh,
Well, I'm not sure because I've got it open as a PDF, so I'm not sure how to do that.
you might be able to, or not. I think we all have it, but
Okay.
if anybody, and we've got a couple of visitors watching, you can access it on the school website too, the agenda, if you want to follow.
Okay, let's see. So we'll call the meeting to order then. And you say we have, well, we'll do the pledge first.
Okay.
And sorry, I never followed up with flags since last time, but we should do that, but we'll do that next time. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And you say we have visitors?
Yeah, it looks like either Mark or Shiloh Hand or both, and Raylyn Wemhoff, or yeah, Horton.
And is anybody signed in to talk?
Nope.
Okay. So next we'll do consent agenda then. If we have no public comment, we'll move on to consent agenda. You were sent the March 9th board meetings plus the minutes, plus for a regular meeting, plus a special meeting of March 30, district financial reports, April bills, and student body financial reports. Does anyone have any questions? And they're attached here if you're looking at the PDF file. Does anyone have any questions for any of those reports? Seeing none, we could entertain a motion for approving those. Quinn, you're muted.
I can unmute you, Quinn. Or you can. I think I can.
There you go.
Oh, no. And then
Every time I try to mute myself, then I can't unmute.
Okay,
So moved.
thank you. Do we have a second? Carrie seconded that.
I think I have the settings so none of the board members can unmute themselves.
Well, that would make for a quick meeting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm-
I tried to chat you.
I'm going to try to unmute all of the board members, I guess, and we'll go from there. Jackie, you might need to wave if you need unmuted.
Are we good now?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Quinn motion, Carrie seconded.
Yeah. Any discussion on the motion? Looks like everybody's unmuted now. So Hearing none, we'll vote. Then, I've been in a few board meetings, and rather than try and count the A's, the chair just asks for nays. And then if there's no nays or abstain, then assuming all the rest are A's. So any nays? Any abstain? Okay, then that's unanimous. We'll proceed like that because it's hard to tell for sure how people are voting otherwise. Next up is for action items is the first reading of the 8,000s. And Mr. Teagues, would you like to give us some comments on any changes there?
Yeah, so I shared out that document kind of late in the day, so you might need to check your email about that. I'm gonna pull it up here. You guys have had just kind of the generic 8,000s. There weren't a whole lot of changes to the generic stuff, but I will walk through kind of each policy. Again, this is just first reading, kind of as we continue our progress. We only have a couple more sections left, and they keep getting shorter. So this was the longest of what we have left. So the 8,000s is kind of the not directly related student support services. So things like school lunch, transportation and busing, and a few other things that are laid out in the 8,000 section. We have those. It's a little bit of a change for the current way we've done policy, because a lot of times those things are in different places in our policy, but now they'll kind of be lumped together as these other services that we provide that are non-educational, I guess, even though they play an important role. So I'll just start walking through and holler or wave if you have any questions. So 8100 is the first policy. It just kind of lays out our obligation to provide transportation to and from school to students. We already have this policy in place word for word. It's an ISBA policy. We just have it numbered different. So I recommend adoption on that. 8105 is similar to our existing policies, two of them, 575 and 720. It is for extracurricular busing. Stripped out a section that wouldn't allow us to drop students off between their destination and the school. I think that's kind of specific for, when we live remotely, sometimes it just makes sense to drop a kid off somewhere between those two places. If you're going to Genesee and you can drop a kid off at Moeller and it makes a family's life easier, it's just a good practice. And then added a provision for superintendent or principal approval of specific circumstances so that that policy could be waived when needed. In general, the best practice rule liability-wise is that if a bus takes them, a bus should bring them home and get them to the exact same spot. We do that differently with parents. The way in practice that we do it is that parents can, without any pre-approval, take their own children home after a game. But then to release them to anyone else, you would need superintendent or principal approval. And it would have to be an adult. So it gives us that ability to work. And then it also adds to our ability. I think if you kind of take a look at it in the future with programs like softball or baseball or wrestling comes up sometimes, where the district might opt to not provide transportation. It gives us that in policy now. So rather than kind of making it up on the fly what we want to do, we'll have that worded out in policy. And it states that then, parents are responsible for that transportation. And then that's what 8105F is the form that goes along with that. So that would be if a parent, if somebody decided to start taking wrestling and we co-op with, say, Prairie or CAMI, like we've done in the past, we would be able to have that parent sign that waiver that's ISBA approved, been looked at by attorneys, and then move forward with that. 8105P, if you remember, as we're going through policy, there's just the number, which is a policy, If it ends with an F, it's a form that we will use. And then if it ends with a P, it's a procedure or a practice you could kind of think of. And it just adds kind of a discipline procedure for students who violate rules while being transported on extracurricular. The other section, the original 8100, would, going to and from school is like being at school, but extracurricular is a little different. 8110 is a new policy. It allows the district to pick up students. It's just called safety busing, but we have a 1.5 mile radius that we don't bus. That's pretty standard, but under specific circumstances, we can safety bus students. That might be age, it might be just, like it says in there, like if they have to walk on a highway that's 50 miles an hour or faster for the most reasonable route to school. And so I don't think we have any of those right now, but it would allow for that busing kind of within the range that we typically make kids walk. This is a classic example of one of the arguments for us to adopt new policy. This policy was taken from ISBA. It matches up with 710 in our old policy. But even in that old policy, it has references to other policies, and those references actually use ISBA's numbers. So it's an example of how, one policy that we currently have in place is actually referencing things that we don't or wouldn't have had in place. 8115 limits the hours of service for bus drivers in a day or a week. If you would have asked me, I would have said that we had this in policy, but I searched and couldn't find it. It limits it to the amount of time that they can actually be on driving behind the wheel, and then the amount of service time as well, counting the off-duty kind of when they're watching a game or something like that. I think it's set at 15 hours, and it matches with the federal recommendations for commercial drivers who are carrying passengers. I think the drive time is up to 10 hours of driving a day in a 24-hour period and 15 of on-duty time. That does occasionally come up, when you go, Ken probably as a football coach, when you go to Mullen or Clark Fork, you get pretty close. But
Yeah, you do.
Seems reasonable. 8130 is just transportation of students with disabilities and lays out the accommodations that can be made. We still have that. If I look out my window, the bus, if needed, and then other accommodations that can be made for special education students and students with disabilities. That would be kind of determined by an IEP team, and then we would have to match that as a district. Of course, administrators, parents, special ed teacher are on that IEP team. 8140 is the general student conduct on buses, and it matches with our existing policy 730. Just recommend its adoption, and the procedures, the policy and procedure that goes along with it. 8150 is unauthorized bus entry. This is state code, and it matches existing policy 722 exactly. 8160 is about contracting for transportation services. My recommendation there, this would be new policy. We don't have a contract for transportation services, but it doesn't like require a contract or anything like that. It just kind of lays out the things that the board would consider if that ever came up. So I don't see any harm in adopting it and having it in place. 8170 and 8170P talks about district-owned vehicles. We have a policy for that. It's 808. I struck some of the language that was in there regarding vehicles provided to specific employees, since we don't have that situation. Some districts will, they'll buy their superintendent a Lamborghini and allow
In your dreams.
Okay. Okay, I thought I'd try, but see who was paying attention. But I just kind of struck that language. Everything else looks great to me. 8180 is bus driver training and responsibilities. This is a new policy that I couldn't find in ours. It's in line with the state law, and I recommend adoption. 8185 is bus driver use of cell phones while on duty. You know, basically this says that while they're driving, they can't be on their cell phones. It has some specific carve outs, like in a case of an emergency or some other places like that, so that we're not trying to get anybody busted. But they can still use the radio. That's another wireless device, but it just prohibits the use of cell phones while driving. 8190 is just a policy on emergency procedures and practices on a bus. Recommend adoption. 8195. I'm gonna mute everybody for a second, so just wave or make a comment. I'm getting some weird feedback. Let's see. All right. Okay, so let's see, where was that? 8190. 8195 is a new policy. This one's a little bit different. I don't know. If you guys wanted to have a discussion about it, I'd be willing to not include it. But I also think it's probably a good general practice. It would restrict bus idling times to save money and reduce accumulated emissions, putting staff and students at risk, so we're not just gassing people out. It does, at first I was like, well, that doesn't make sense when you're living in cold Idaho, but it does allow for idling time to warm up a bus in what it calls extremely cold weather, which is probably about half of our year. I don't think it puts any, I don't think it hamstrings us to not ever be able to idle a bus, but it does say, you know, if a bus is parked and there isn't a purpose of heating up the bus, it should probably be turned off unless you're going to be less than 5 minutes. Let's see, 8200. So that wrapped up the 8100s or the bus. 8200 is our school wellness policy. We already have that in place through ISBA. A couple of years ago, we went through that audit by the feds, and that's been in place for a while. The district, so that's 8200. 8210 is our district nutrition committee. It also matches exactly with the policy that we have. 8220 is a food services school lunch program. This would be new policy for us, but it outlines our goals, community involvement, qualifications, and training for our school lunch personnel and program. I recommend adoption of that. 8230 is our nutrition standards, and that's an exact match. Also, a lot of these, like I said, were gone through about 2 or 3 years ago. Marcy would know more accurately. 8235, I recommended not for adoption. It's just a water consumption and water bottle policy. I kind of feel like what we're doing with water bottles is working, and that there's really not, it just adds language that just isn't necessary. But again, if you want to take a look at that and feel like the board should adopt it, I'm open to that. 8240 is about school meals, and it lays out some of the best practices for a school lunch program. I think we're meeting those. But this is a step up from our existing policy that lists those out. So I recommend adoption. 8245 is one maybe potential for some disagreement from people or something. We have an existing policy 771. This has to do with charges. I tried to match some of that and come up with something reasonable, but in this plan, students would be allowed to charge up to 3 meals or $10, whichever one hit first. Alternate meals would be provided at no cost if they don't pay their bill. There's something to consider for that. So the alternate meal is typically a peanut butter jelly sandwich and a milk, or a peanut butter sandwich, I'm not even sure about jelly, or a cheese sandwich if they're allergic to peanut butter. We really haven't got to that, but it does allow us to have a little bit of a stick, I guess I would say, if it really became a problem. Most of the time we work through these things, and we don't go immediately to this. One thing to consider is that free meal. So we have to provide something to kids that are racking up charges. It also lays out some things like, you know, we provide them with an application for free and reduced to see if they qualify, or encourage them to do that. But alternate meals could be provided, but that would be at the district cost. That was one of the options that we have. And then another thing that I like about it that we haven't had in place, and we have had people donate before, but it establishes the ability to have a charitable assistance account so that, you know, at the end of a year, I could ask a family, or when someone graduates and has an extra balance, if they would like to just donate that balance instead of us cutting them a check for $9.75, if they just want to donate to this charitable assistance. And then we can use that charitable assistance fund to pay the bills that we need to. We also get people in the community. We just had someone in the community that donated a bunch of money to just help pay off students' accounts on the lunch program. And so it gives us a place to kind of house that money so it doesn't get lost in another fund or account, and it stays for that purpose. 8250 is just, I mean, a lot of these are federal guidelines about food and beverage sales that came from several years back, but it replaces that policy exactly. 8270 is a teacher to student incentive. This still allows, but just discourages the use of unhealthy treats for rewards. So I know there are teachers that do that. Jackie and I visited about that today. Like, you get a little candy bar if you answer a quiz question right or something like that. And that would still be allowable. It would just kind of be a policy in place to say, hey, there might be some other ways to establish some healthier habits and still reward kids. Nobody's going to get busted for handing out a Hershey's Kiss because you got a quiz question right. Let's see. So that's the 82s, which is the food services. 8300 is crisis management, and we also call it school safety and security plan. So 8300 replaces existing policy 510 and kind of lays out what the plan would look like. We have one in place. It is reviewed every year. Jackie normally does that in the fall and works in the summer and then the fall to do that. We have a committee that is made up of the right people and everything's in place. We're really ahead of the ball on that. 8300 P1 through 9 were really specific examples. And so my recommendation is not to add to the thickness of the policy manual. It's going to be thick enough, but just to have, just to take those out. They were very specific. I will share those documents with Jackie because I think those could potentially just go, you know, if she sees something or catches something in there that might be beneficial to our overall plan, we certainly could put it in our school safety and security plan. But just to have them in policy, what would happen is, you know, a principal or whoever's running that the safety and security plan might make changes, and then all of a sudden, if it didn't align with policy, it could be an issue. And so you'd have to be constantly looking at both documents. So that's my recommendation there. There were very specific ones. If you look through them, if you want to go back and look, you know, there was like an earthquake, or what happens if a plane crashes nearby, or a leak, a chemical leak, those kind of things. 8310 is our AED policy. It replaces existing policy 980. It's one thing that, as I was reading through, I think as a district and as a superintendent, I need to do a better job of kind of managing that AED piece, or at least making sure we have the staff in place to manage it. I think there's some concerns I have that we aren't at this point. One of the things is they want at least biannually consultation with a physician to make sure that what we're doing with AEDs matches what they would want us to do. So I wrote in our notes that I don't feel like we've really been in compliance with it, even though we do have an existing policy. It's very similar to this one, and it actually says I should be consulting with a physician too on a biannual basis. So I think there's some room for improvement there for me and as a district as a whole with the AEDs, and then checking on them. 8310 F1, F2, and F3 are just the forms that are associated with that. They range from the form to just check off that it's been inspected, to the plan, and then also a form that you would fill out if the AED is ever used, really for liability purposes. 8320 is about fire drills and evacuation plans. We were supposed to have a fire drill today, so I put a little post out on Facebook to say you could practice a fire drill at home and come up with a home escape plan if you wanted to. But it's aligned with, we meet with the building inspector every year, and he kind of lays out what we need to do for fire drills. And this is right in, it's almost like he was talking to me as I was reading it. So it's right in line with state policy, and the building inspector when he comes. The 8320P is just that procedure for doing those. 8500 then moving into a new is about risk management, and it doesn't require, but it allows you to get a bond on a business manager or superintendent if the district thought that was the best risk management process. And ISBA recommends its adoption, and I do as well. 8510 is about district safety and just requires us to be in compliance with OSHA policies. I could not find anything in our policy that matches that requirement. Just as far as training, we do that for, for liability purposes. We do training on safe schools, whether it's lifting or ladder work. We can assign those trainings out to new staff members and as a refresher for old staff members. 8520 is inspection of school facilities. This is in state law. They have to come once a year and inspect our facilities. We generally see Gary, he's told us he's going to retire now for years, but we see him in November, sometimes December if he's running late. And it matches our existing policy 904. 8530 is our policy requiring the district to carry comprehensive insurance, and we do. We do that through Morton and Company. And then it limits liability for personal property brought onto the district that is destroyed or damaged. There's the one exemption to that where the district might be on the hook insurance-wise is if the superintendent asks a staff member to bring personal property on to the campus, then the district can be on the hook if it's damaged or destroyed. That is different than a superintendent allowing a staff member to bring personal property. If a superintendent allows it, we're not on the hook. If a superintendent requests it, then we are. 8600 is about records management. We're really, this policy just has to match with state law. There is a schedule. The state creates a schedule for records management for public entities. Between Marcy and myself, we kind of manage that. This also adds in kind of an 8605, I guess, lays out the kind of a schedule of the list of types of documents and then the retention that we have to have. A lot of documents like board meeting minutes are permanent retention. We keep those forever. Other documents are not that long, just kind of depends. 8610 then replaces our existing policy 421 and 421F regarding HIPAA and specifically kind of the privacy around that. I recommend adoption. 8700 is a new policy just regarding copyright and commercial use of school software. That's in the tech end of this, I guess. And then 8800, I'm not sure why the ISBA decided to put it in the 8000s, but that's probably the only place that it fit, is drones. And we adopted that, I think, about a year ago. And so they have a couple of options. I just kept it exactly the same, and you can review that, but I recommend adoption of the alternative one, I guess. And that is the 8000 section. Well, I can unmute people now. I don't know if anybody has any questions or concerns and if not, this is just a first reading, so you certainly have time to go back through and look at my notes and cross-reference that with the file that was shared out with all of the policies. Marcy also put them in the Google Drive. We can read them, and if you have any questions, just follow up with me individually, or certainly there'll be time to discuss it at the next board meeting as well. Sorry, Ken, I didn't unmute you. There you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That was really well done. And anybody have any questions on comments on that? it's kind of cool that we have at least done some of those in the past couple years so that we don't have to revise too terribly much. I mean, there's plenty there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I'm used to having two screens, and I don't have that luxury at home here. Back to board packet.
So there is one more policy there. It's the 7236. Again, it's up to the board, but I would recommend doing this as a first and second reading, which the board is able to do. These are some changes regarding the new federal legislation to 7236, and I think I'm trying to scroll down on my page to see them.
Are they in the packet with the policies or in the board packet?
They're just in the board packet. So these changes came from the ISBA, and then of course after we got the agenda posted, they sent us a few more, but we'll just hold off on those for now. But just regarding employees paid with federal funds and during unexpected or extraordinary closures. And the basic part is that, and I can just read it to you too if you're trying to scroll down and find it, but it is the intent of the district to apply consistent accounting treatment when allocating funds across both federal and non-federal funding streams. The district will ensure that expenditures incurred to meet allowability requirements and are both reasonable regardless of whether the funding stream is federal, state, or local in nature. And basically what it's saying up above is district employees who are paid with federal funds should be compensated or given unpaid time off in the same manner as similarly situated district employees paid with district funds. So that would mean that a teacher paid with Title I dollars should be treated in the same, we will treat them in the same way that we would treat a teacher who is paid with state dollars or local dollars. And then the same would be true for like a paraprofessional or an aide.
Okay, so you're recommending adoption.
Yeah, I just think given the circumstances, I think it would be a good idea to treat it as a first and second reading. So, I mean, we can take the time if you want to make sure you scroll down and read through it and make sure you have an understanding of what it says. But that would be my recommendation.
Does anyone have a question about that policy? And just for clarification, we don't have to have a first, second reading on every policy. We can do that in one night. And that's what Sean's suggesting we do with this policy. Any questions? Comments? Entertain a motion to approve 7236.
I move to approve it.
Thank you, Carrie. Do I have second?
Second.
Quinn, second that. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, is there anybody who wishes to vote nay? Anybody who wishes to abstain? Then that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. Get back here, board packet. And so the next item is school mascot survey. Hopefully you've all been able to open up now I got to go back to it. Where's it at? I had it open. Well, Mr. Teagues, would you like to, if you can get to the part that the pie, I think the most useful section is that pie section chart. And I guess.
So I can talk a little bit about, we have, I'm just looking at it here, scrolling down. We had 137 as of Friday, 135 as of Friday when I walked out the door and had kind of compiled what I had gotten so far. We have another, looks like about 25 or so that came in today, and that are not reflected on that survey. I didn't realize I had them until I got in here for the board meeting. But so out of about 150, like I said, I think we sent out, just looking here, we sent out 414 total pieces of mail. So 414 different households received this. That a couple or a large family just received one, and a single person in a home. So we used several different lists. We used our mailing list. We used voter rolls. We did whatever we could to get it out there. So we sent out 414 and got about, so that number about 140 back, or 100 actually now altogether with those added, a little more than that, 160 back. If you see the Excel spreadsheet on the right hand side, I kind of summarized those, and I can talk a little bit. I just have a general idea with these 25 that have come in. But so how important is it to keep the mascot? The largest individual piece of the pie was that it was extremely important to keep the mascot. That it's kind of hard to tell in there, but that represents about, oh no, excuse me. The largest piece of the pie was that it was not important. That was 36%. That being said, on this one, the either extremely important or very important made up about 44, 45% total combined. And if you add in moderately, you would get over a majority there. But moderately could swing that to a majority either way you wanted to look at it, because it was 36 and 6 with slightly and 13 with moderate. Going down, I would say with the 25 new, that will shift even more, not by a lot, but even more slightly towards the not at all being the biggest piece. I think we just added about 15 of the 25 that responded, that got it in today, were on that mark. The next one is, do you feel it's necessary to change the mascot at this point? That's 47.2% in the not, and 8.7% in the extremely, with some other shades in between there. I'm just looking at that graph and I have no idea how 47.2% makes a circle look like that. But and then, do you feel like that positively changing the mascot could be a positive community experience? The general feeling there was not, also with 41.6% of the responses. Will you continue to, oh, I know why, because I just screwed up my table with a bunch of blank entries. I better delete those so that it doesn't get, well, it's probably too late now. On the next one, will you continue to support the school mascot if the decision is made to change the mascot, or continue to support the school? Pretty positive if you think of completely, very, and moderate. The overall response is in the 80% range of people who would continue to support the school if the decision was made to change the mascot, at various levels, of course. But a majority responded that they would completely continue to support the school. Will a change provide us with an opportunity to select a mascot that's better aligned? Again, that falls into that range of where most people said no. At the very least, I could say a plurality of people said no, that they did not believe that. And then as far as response, you can see there that the vast, maybe 3/4 of the people who responded were constituents and not parents. So that's kind of a summary of the data.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, I got to say that's a great response rate. That's a great indication. I think what we'll do now is open up for board comments to discuss the results here. So would anybody like to give your viewpoint or discuss any of these results that we're seeing here? And just go ahead and speak up if you're ready to.
I mean, I think the results kind of show what I thought was there, that most of the people in the community don't want to change it. And that's kind of what I'm seeing of these numbers, that most kind of would just like to leave it where it's at. And I kind of figured they'd still support whatever we decide because they support the school, but I'd say across the board, it looks like it's mostly to leave it what it is.
Thank you, Quinn. Other comments?
You know, as a superintendent, I've been part of this conversation for a while now. We've had lots of board meetings, and I know there's a feeling to kind of move forward either maybe one direction or another. The other thing that as I was thinking about it today is that for the board to consider and maybe discuss too, there is the May levy election that is, coming up soon. And so, I don't know that I would be, as much as I would kind of like a decision to move forward one way or the other, I think this levy election is going to be perhaps more important than ever in the history of the school district. And so one thing to consider might be to continue to discuss and talk. And I'm not trying to waffle out of like making a decision, but let this happen and then come back and make a decision. It's just one thought.
I would say,
Go
I
ahead,
was-
Carrie.
sorry. I was going to say, I mean, yes, at the beginning of the year, this was one of our really big issues, one of our top priorities. And,
Yeah.
Obviously it's kind of back burner right now. I mean,
Right.
even if we voted tonight to approve the change, what's going to happen in the
Right.
next few months? It's not our priority right now.
Right.
Am I ready to vote one way or the other? Not necessarily. I mean, if we have to, yes, I know which way I might be leaning, but still this survey does show some different numbers that we just got in today, and it does maybe lead to a little more consideration. So
I'd like to make one comment stepping out of the chair role, not necessarily for any kind of action tonight, but the second one, do you feel it is necessary to change the school mascot at this time? To me, that's kind of the heart of the issue. Like 60% say not, and that's exactly right. I don't think we are facing any external pressure from the tribe or anybody else to change the mascot right now. And that's kind of why I think as a board, we initiated this conversation. Personally, after watching what happened in Southern Idaho, I don't want to wait until we have to change our mascot, because it's an ugly thing for our community, an ugly thing for our relationships with our neighbors in the tribe, and an ugly thing, that's just a very difficult thing. I don't think that we need to do anything tonight because, like you say, it just feels like this was one of the most important things we were looking at, and now it feels kind of like, well, wow, there's something that needs to be looked at, but is it the right time now? I don't know, but I do think that there's several ways to interpret this data that we have here, and I would like some further work before we decide. And for one thing, we held 3 meetings, and the first meeting, if you look at that, then those numbers, they roughly paralleled this in a way. If you think about the people who talked, there was about a half and half kind of split with some kind of, well, yeah, I don't want you to change it, but if you do, this is what, or we had, I don't want you to change it, period, and I'll hate you forever if you do, kind of, not hate you, but I mean, I won't support the district, that type of thing. So we saw those kinds of things. I'd be interested, to look at this data further based on the parents and the constituents, breaking it out that way. taking a look at that way. And with your new item, the 25 new ones
Yeah.
that you have added those in, I'd like
Yeah.
to see that before we go forward. But I'll step back now and open up the rest of the board to make comments.
Well, I definitely agree with what Sean said that, you know, because this is a major decision. It's not something you want to be doing right when you got a levy vote coming. I mean, because you want time to explain your decision and make sure everybody understands what we did. So yeah, I'm not looking to make a decision this meeting or probably the next one. Get the levy done, and then where we have time to look at it a little harder.
Seems like there's a lot of other more pressing things, just to echo what Carrie said. It's like feels like a little bit of a back burner item right now.
Isn't it funny how life can do that to you? It's not funny in a way, but I mean, it's kind of funny. Okay, well, first of all, Mr. Teeks, thank you for working with us on designing the instrument and getting it out and summarizing the results. If you could further break some of that down, you know,
Yep.
by constituents, by parents, that's all we have really. We don't have age or anything like that, but
Yep.
agenda maybe
That works for me. I will continue a little cross tabulation on it and have some where you know, maybe in strong support, I guess cross pieces out really how the tribe felt about it or the tribe does. And you know, this time when the tribe internally, just like we've done, I mean, ultimately it's not my decision, it's the board's. It's happening, but it is. And
I can't say this for sure. People who are opposed to an opportunity to do that, but the Lapway board members at the attitude on their part, like, you have plenty of time to decide on your own. Comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll move on then. It's not going to go away. Let's see if I can find.
Continuation of soft closure.
Continuation of the soft closure, and as I said, up with some guidance today, and then didn't take any action, any new remainder of the school year. So our last day, and then they laid out by the State Board of Education. Gonna do today is come up with kind of that what that might look like. What that yet? And so they're ultimately just kind of, you know, approaching the board, and I left it. And if we decide to reopen once we see some guidance, we certainly could re-meet. Just want to extend it right now. If we wanted to, you know, either mirror what the state board has done, or if we wanted to extend it to the next board meeting, or, you know, those options are out there.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. Could we, you know, do a motion to say close it through the end of the month with you giving you the power to, Sean, the power to unilaterally close it through the next board meeting? So we don't have to have a special meeting to change it. Is that an
Or-
option?
Yeah,
Right now, our motion is close to the 28th right now, isn't it?
yeah, until the end of April, the 30th.
The 30th, okay.
Yeah.
So we've got that in place right now.
Yeah.
If we just mirror what the state board has said, though, when they do finally come out with their guidelines, then that gives us the flexibility to have a meeting and see if we've met the guidelines.
Yes, that would.
So that seems more logical, doesn't it?
I think that seems like the most logical thing to me. You know, one thing I'll just kind of add in, I've been visiting with Jackie and some other staff members too, and parents. You know, Jackie and I have been calling all the parents. We have the potential of some extra days built in at the end of the year that we're over on our minutes. This is hard. It's hard for parents, it's hard for staff. And it's amazing to me that the 2+ weeks now that I've seen it, that everybody's hanging on. But that goodwill at some point is going to run out, because it's just, this is exhausting for a lot of people that are involved. And so, I'm still rolling around, and I think we would have some time at the next board meeting if we wanted to officially like close early. But that's something in my mind that, okay, we've done some learning and we've pushed forward, but maybe this last week or something, we can do something else. So that's something on my mind. The other idea is that, and this wouldn't require board action, but we would kind of keep the virtual doors open, but then a lot of discussion now around the last week or two of school kind of slow down the pace of instruction to almost just catch up work and getting kind of centered for this upcoming summer, and then giving a week to maybe recollect technology and get it back into our possession. So kind of a nice, easy off ramp from the school year in the last two weeks of what we would consider to be instruction. So that one doesn't necessarily require board action, but my recommendation would be to mirror the state boards with the understanding that if the situation does change, and the state board also brought up the federal piece, you kind of need all those pieces to get in place. The federal government, the state government, which is our governing body, is the State Board of Education on this issue, and then also the local health district. So that would be what my recommendation is, to extend it for the remainder of the year with the ability to come back.
I have a question. It's just nothing serious really, but I mean, it is serious, but if we were to decide that we were able to go back, at what point would that not be realistic? Like, how many weeks would you even entertain we put kids back in school?
Yeah, boy, just from I know there's a superintendent from Southern Idaho who's really interested in having kids back and hoping that he can do it. The vast majority probably aren't, but there is an argument for kind of putting a button on things and going into the summer. I mean, in my opinion, if everything was lined up and this, the pandemic kind of broke and everybody felt like there were safety measures in place and we could get back with kids, it would be a dream come true, and that we could take, even if it was a day or two, and just come back together and celebrate what we've done and then send kids off to the summer. So I think really, even though it might not be huge instructionally, I think we could do it in a fairly short order. And people would be thrilled. Is that going to happen though? I still just want to be realistic. And if I'm reading the tea leaves, I don't see it right now, but I'd love it.
Yeah.
Can I ask Sean, when you are going through the scenario you presented a moment ago, is that wind down 2 weeks? Is that from the 15th of May on, or is that the first 2 weeks of May you're talking about?
So our release date is the 29th. In my mind, with this wind down, what we would do, our seniors, I'm gonna grab a calendar here so I have it, and maybe I'll show it to you, or I don't know how it'll come across on video, but all right. Is it all backwards too?
No.
No, it's
Okay.
correct.
So the 29th is the last day of May that we could get to, that's our last school day. Graduation was scheduled for the 22nd. So in my mind, what a senior wind down would look like for the seniors would be this week, the 4th through the 8th, would be catch up and finish up any projects, but no new instruction. The 11th through the 15th would be a chance to kind of gather, and then this, excuse me, I got my weeks wrong. Starting on the 11th, catch up, and then gather technology and graduate. The younger kids would be somewhere in this range. These 2 weeks would be 18th, starting at the 18th.
Okay.
So that gives us, counting this week, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We would have, counting this week, we would have 5 more weeks of instruction, and then 2 weeks of my off ramp. The seniors would have 4 more weeks of instruction and 2 weeks of off ramp.
Follow up on that then, and you might mention this in your report, but then will there be is there a plan for the seniors to present their projects, in a Zoom format or something to community members, or?
You know, the plan that I've heard right now, and I will follow up with that and get some more information. They are planning to present. I don't know about the overall public nature of it. I think that's a great idea. The other piece is that when the idea is that when the library reopens, there's already been some conversations with the library about setting up a space, kind of a temporary space over the summer that would exhibit their projects as well. So both the actual physical project and then all of their work, which I think would be a good showcase of their work. But I like the idea of some form of a public presentation too. I know they will be presenting to judges digitally. I just don't know about the whole public.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about this topic? So if we're going to go with the state's board's recommendation, or we need a motion then
Yeah.
for that.
I'll move that we follow the state board's guidelines on soft
For-
closure
Through the remainder of the
through the
school year.
remainder of the school year.
Yep.
I'll second.
Sean, could you unmute Polly?
Yep. There you go, Polly. Sorry. Might take a second. I clicked it though.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Sandy.
There you go, Polly. I'm
Yep.
sorry.
No, I think I did it.
So we have a motion to follow the state board's guidelines for the rest of the school year. And part of that motion then, just to clarify, is when they come up with guidelines for schools that want to put kids back in school, then we could, if we feel like we meet those guidelines, meet together and make a determination at that time. That'd be part of the motion, because that's part of the state board's intent. Does that make sense, Carrie?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Polly, did you have a comment?
No,
Okay,
I just wanted to be heard.
well, that's cool.
In case I did have a comment.
Thank you. So then we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, do we have any nay? Any abstain? Then the motion passes. Thank you. Unanimous. Okay, now we're ready for reports.
Right. And
Mrs. Mossman.
see if I can unmute you, Jackie, or I don't know if you can unmute yourself. There you go. You're
There,
on.
did that
Yep.
work?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, like Sean said, we were calling all parents. We thought we could do this in a few days, but it didn't work that slick. It's really important though for us to get the parents' perspective, and as well as the students. I've had high school students call or email me as well, or ask for some feedback, and it's really much appreciated. I'll be sharing that data with our teachers. We have weekly meetings, and so we'll be discussing kind of some pros and cons things. And teachers have asked, and this is all new to everybody, and they've asked about what can they do better. So one thing that we're kind of struggling with right now is how we take attendance and make it halfway accurate. So each teacher and level of kids have different ways of doing that. Sometimes it's turning in an assignment. Sometimes it's answering a question in the morning or emailing if they can't get through. So there's a lot of variety that goes with that. Mary's been really good about offering us the reports, and then those get edited because kids sometimes will email later in the evening. And we have had the breakfast and lunch delivery has been very popular. Jenny is at the high of ever creating breakfasts and lunches to deliver. She said the breakfast has doubled and lunch is like up to 140 plus. So that's the more than she's ever done on site. And then we have aides helping her every day, and sometimes teachers that are available. They're not in the morning. The elementary sometimes are there. We'll help get that out if she needs it. The routes also deliver materials on Wednesdays, and we also collect materials, but sometimes whenever they're given to a bus driver or to Jenny at the town route, they're always, you know, just collected and then put into teachers' mailboxes. Some of the kids need more of that paper design, but that just aren't comfortable with tech, or the parents have requested. So that's been really helpful to have that. As we contact parents, there's a few things that I'll share about their comments. I think the first thing I've heard that happens a lot is parents have friends in different states, even in different parts of Idaho, and they are just very impressed on getting some kind of quality work for the kids to really focus on, to continue learning. It's not happening in a lot of places, and a lot of times the kids are just, you know, you can do this if you want, or here's some online resources and good luck. And that's just really not where we want our kids, and the teachers are really good about filling that need for sure. A couple things, other things that have come up, they really, the directions are very clear from teachers. I know sometimes that's been modified a little just to get emails and slides that are given out daily. That's helpful. The routines are difficult to mimic what you do at school to home. It's just not used to it. It's teachers and not teachers, parents and students alike having difficulty sometimes with those routines. I've noticed that the calls I'm making this week, parents are a little more comfortable with that. They really appreciate the buses coming out and the papers coming out and the food coming out. And the Google Classroom, I think parents are saying, wow, I've learned a lot from my kids because I didn't know anything about this Google Classroom and Google Meet, and that's been pretty positive. The Google Classroom has worked out pretty well. It's if you have multiple children at one household, sometimes it takes a lot of data and that slows things down. So that's something that teachers have worked with different families for the needs of their data. Online staff meetings, there's a picture of us meeting online. It's new for us too, so we're kind of going through a lot of what students are going through, trying to keep connected and figure out, you know, how to best meet these needs that we have. So we've been meeting weekly for both buildings. I had an elementary meeting this afternoon, and we'll have a secondary one tomorrow afternoon. And it really has helped us figure out, you know, how to do this online learning, how to do it better. So professional development that's been offered, LCSC has offered different districts an opportunity to provide a class for teachers. So I wrote up a syllabus and it was accepted through LCSC for $25 a credit. Teachers can take 1 or 2 credits and can submit their online learning platform and how they're facilitating this for credit. So it's been really helpful for that. We watched a film, most of us were access to it, called Resilience. And it's about teaching kids who really struggle with a lot of things. And I think those are the kids that we worry about the most, the ones that don't have a lot of home support. And I think those are the kids that we're trying to reach out the most to kind of provide that as we can. And then ESEA Network, the conference that a few of us attended in Atlanta this year, this couple months ago, we have access to the sessions. And so I'll be getting that information out just to remind staff that, hey, during this time, and I think we have it for 3 months, 3 months, I think, Sean.
No, 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's a really high professional development opportunity for teachers just to attend these recorded sessions, and I think they'll benefit a lot from that. So we're trying to take advantage of some extra time that staff might have, you know, in the afternoons if they're not getting called in by students. But it is taking quite a bit of time for the planning and implementation of this program. But I think our kids are learning how to navigate it, and the staff is learning how to make it better. So we're still working on that.
Yeah.
And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Can unmute anybody or?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie.
Any questions or comments? It's really great to hear, anything positive as far as home or the distance learning thing, but good positive comments are especially welcome. Okay, we're ready for Mr. Teague's report.
All right. So I will just piggyback really quick on that ESEA network. It was neat that we were able to kind of honor our school, and Jackie and Lisa and Marietta were able to go to that conference. But the cool part is, because we were awarded as distinguished school, we have access to that entire conference for 3 months. And we thought it would be a good time. We were debating about when to turn it on so that staff could see it. And we felt like this would be a really good time. So basically every staff member can now attend this conference if they want, which is a really cool professional development opportunity. As far as a superintendent report, the top line item for me is state funding, and there's still a lot of question marks, but it is really starting to kind of solidify too. So the governor has held back 1% of the state funding this year. That number accounts to about, Marcy and I were visiting, about $16,000, I think. That's solid, but there is an expectation still, as the federal legislation passes through, that a good chunk of that, because we're a Title I school, will come back to us and be fairly flexible. So for the most part, those federal dollars should hold us virtually harmless, which is good news for us as a district for this year. We have plenty of cushion, so even without the federal help, I think we would still be in pretty good shape as we kind of tighten up what we're doing here too. The bigger news is the kind of 5% holdback that the governor's saying for next year. What we don't have is, there's the big piece of clarification is, what does that where does that 5% come from? And what still actually hasn't been clarified is whether that 5% is after is it, we got a 4.1% increase in funding this year, and then they're going to hold back 5% of that new number, or if it's a 5% of the number we're operating under this year. And that as you can imagine, doing the math in your head, that could make a huge difference. If we don't get the 4.1% projected raise and we get 5% taken away, that could really change how we were budgeting things. At this point, I've asked Marcy just to kind of budget with a flat as far as staff and other things are concerned. But we'll continue to watch that and work on that. It's a significant hit, but we'll see. We'll be able to navigate it as we learn more about what that might look like. It's not happening mid-year, which gives us the positive in that is that we have time to kind of plan and think about where that might come from. In my mind, just something to plan for, and this is again just reading tea leaves without any evidence yet. The biggest chunk of money that we received from the state goes to staff salary and benefits. And so the easiest way to get 5% out of any budget is to freeze that in some way at the state level. Because when 80% of the money the state sends us goes to salary and benefits, if you're trying to get 5% out of that remaining 20%, you're talking about like killing a whole line item or program or something like that. There's some talk about like the master educator premium, just ending it. That might be a way to do it. Then there's discussions about people who put in all that effort and what kind of obligation is the state under to them. There's talk about, Marcy and I were visiting about professional development money that we get. There might be some other ways to kind of soften that blow. But regardless, if you're talking about taking 5% out of entire budget and you're trying to do it with just a 20% pie, that means some of those programs are going to suffer mightily unless you do it on the bigger thing of salary and benefits. So just things to continue to watch and monitor. Just as far as me staying up to date on latest changes, I meet with the Region 2 superintendents. They're a great group. Dr. Wendy Moore is the president of our association from Genesee. She's really on top of things. And so it's a great group of people to talk to and see what other school districts are doing, get ideas, learn and grow, catch things that you don't miss, that you miss when you're watching, 5 webinars a day. and just be able to have those conversations. The ISBA continues, check those emails from Quinn and Micah and Morgan, everybody else, sending those out, just kind of guidance and policy. Specifically, they've been very helpful around the federal legislation changes. IDLA has provided some great board training for teachers, and then also districts and board members as well in implementing their remote learning. I've participated in State Department calls on special ed, transportation, food services, school nutrition, technology, and finance, and others, and there'll be more coming. And then the state superintendent continues to host her kind of overall webinars to answer questions. It's a whole new world that way, and I've been in more meetings and sat in my chair more than I ever have. Athletics wise, the spring sports have been canceled. Just for your guys' information, when Marcy and I visited, we decided to pay the spring coaches 50% just due to the time of kind of organizing and managing, get ready, ramped up for the spring sports season, and then they coached about three weeks, so not quite half. The junior high coach, which was only me as the track coach, is not getting paid because the junior high track was supposed to start that week. So, but staff evaluations are continuing on in this modified format, we will have been cleared to just use the 2 fall observations that were done. And we, can use some other data as far as student growth, but the plan is just to get those done. School lunch and breakfast, like Jackie mentioned, 145, I think Jenny said to me today, and I think we have 160 kids that go to school. So some of those kids, remember we can serve 1 to 18, so that doesn't mean 145 out of 160, but it's good that what we're doing, and I really think it makes a difference to families. If anything else with these social distancing guidelines, I think it helps some of those families. They don't have to go out to the store as much and interact, and so I think there's some real positives there, and it'll benefit our district as well. Other changes and stuff that we're working through, the staff, I want to, this is a public meeting and people will view this, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that our staff, from the janitor and the lunch and the parapros to the teachers, to administration and office staff, everybody is just working incredibly hard. And I know sometimes there's the comments about, teachers only work 9 months a year, but these guys are really earning it. And I just want, if there's taxpayers listening, to understand that nobody is taking a break, and everybody has been willing to step up when needed. So really kudos to the staff for the work that they're doing. It's nonstop, and it's new for them too, and they haven't missed a beat. We still work through, kind of grading and late work. That's a discussion that's coming up around the state. A lot of districts, and especially larger districts, are not really grading anything. West Ada and Boise, the 2 largest districts in the state of Idaho, both, I check out both their sites because they've got lots of good people that are thinking about things, and they're basically issuing some packets of work with very clear guidance that none of the packets will impact a grade in any way. So whatever grade you had is the grade that you'll have, at the end of the semester. That's difficult, and I can tell you, if I was a high schooler, I could tell you exactly how much stuff I would have got done under those circumstances. So we still, recognizing that this is an incredibly stressful time for families and kids, I think, we still want to continue to have some bar and make kids continue to learn. Will it look exactly like what we used to do? No, but I think it's a good thing. Driver's education, we got some guidance from the state board on that during their meeting today. They waived the requirement. It used to be that we had to simultaneously do the classroom instruction and the driving at the same time. They had to start within a week of each other. So you started the class and then you had to be driving within 7 days. That requirement, that state rule has been waived. And so now I'm working, I gave my dad a call, the driver's ed instructor, today, and coming up with a plan so that we could do the online portion of the driver's ed now or soon, not now, we got some stuff to put together. But in the coming weeks at some point, while kids still have a Chromebook and get started. And then when social distancing guidelines by the state have changed, we could look at the driving portion of it. So we could kind of do that asynchronously. So we're visiting about that and kind of coming up with a plan. And like doing a video game for driving probably isn't going to count. They still need that time in a car, but it's just finding the right time. Attendance is difficult. I honestly don't know. I should probably ask the bigger districts how they're doing attendance. I'm guessing West Ada and Boise are just saying, we've handed out the packets. They can do it if they want. And either way, we're just going to count them in attendance. We have been a little bit more nuanced than that. We are really taking a big team approach with attendance. So, it's teachers. If kids aren't able to show up, we're really encouraging them to communicate that with the teacher and come up with a way to just kind of do the work or be excused from that, but then we can still count them in attendance. So that helps out a ton if students are doing that. If that's not happening, then we follow up with, constant parent communication and then also with administrative to parent communication. So whatever we can do to get kids participating, it's hard. And there are lots of other distractions too. And, overall content coverage and continued learning, I was reminded this week, and I maybe have mentioned it to some of you, but really this time of year, if we were normal and we were sitting in there in the library and talking about what's going on at the school, I would be reporting to you that we've spent hours and hours for the last 2 or 3 weeks testing on the ISAT. And I can tell you that content coverage wise, these weeks are kind of junky in a traditional format because everybody's stressing about the ISAT, everybody's worried, teachers don't want to push too hard, so they kind of back off in other areas because they know their kids are taking tests and a lot of tests. And so in some ways, we can get through more content or as much, even when we've kind of backed off what we normally do because we don't have that distraction of ISATs. And then just kind of long-term thinking for you guys about the criteria to return for school. I know that the state board's going to lay some stuff out and we're going to want to have all that stuff in place, but we really could be facing a new normal for a while. And I just want to kind of plant that seed in board members' brains. There could be all sorts of discussions about what's the best way to come back as a large group of people, and particularly with kids who can be quite the vector to spread any type of virus. So I can't say I know exactly what that's going to look like, but I guess my future thinking brain thinks of all sorts of scenarios of what it might look like, what specific requirements our board's going to have to think about for kids to come back to school. One example of that, and I think we did really good work with our attendance committee to come up with a good solid policy. We sought community input and teacher input, and we kind of balanced the needs and wants of everybody and for what would be best for the district. But that was before the coronavirus. And quite honestly, as a superintendent now, even though that was just a few short months ago, I think that all that discussion and work is probably out the window. We are living in an environment where we would never want to be a school district that's forcing kids in any way to come to school if they have a fever or are feeling sick or anything like that. And so that might be just one little example of the way that things might change when we think about it. There's obviously considerations about the vaccines and testing, and another one that I think about is guests, so like visitors coming to the school. If you're trying to limit or mitigate your risk, all of those things have to be considered. And then, even to the extent of, if a kid is sick in a new future school, they might, because we've gone to this online model, there could be a discussion about if a kid gets a fever, they might not be able to come to school for 14 days. So how do we handle that as a district? Do we even though they're probably feeling well, they might get sick and stay sick for 3 days and feel well. And so how can we still include them and count them for attendance and have them participate while they're kind of not allowed to be in the school building? So lots of things to think about. None of them are solid or concrete, but just to plant that and have it in your mind. I think we continue to improve and enhance our communication with parents and students. The other big one, and I met, it's been kind of fun. I've seen an elementary teacher meeting today. We met specifically with the seniors today and then with the board. So I've kind of covered the gamut of all the stakeholders in our school today, but graduation and end of year discussions. I will tell you from my discussions with some staff members who are involved with the seniors and the seniors themselves. And maybe Lason's listening in, so she can tell you, or we could call on her to tell us if I'm telling the truth. But you know, the seniors felt pretty strongly about holding to the graduation date, with the understanding that by not being flexible with the date, that means we might have to be flexible with how that graduation ceremony looks. So when I talked to them, it was kind of, you know, there's a couple of options. We could, if you want a more traditional looking graduation, we might have to be flexible on the date and say, well, we'll do it at a later time when things open back up. Or stick with the date, but then with the realization that what we used to do for graduation we might not be able to do yet. They were pretty unanimous, I think, in that they like the idea of keeping the date. Of course, they want to graduate and be done. And then modifying what that graduation ceremony looks like if we still have restrictions in place. A couple of things that I talked to them about that then, I've ordered a radio broadcaster so that we could broadcast to people's cars. In my mind, I told them it kind of breaks down the thing I would love the most is if some social restrictions were lifted, we could potentially have that group of kids adequately spaced out, but on a stage together as human beings. I think that would be really cool. We can't do that right now with the social distancing restrictions, but if that much were to be lifted, even if other people had to be in cars, or even if it was an empty gym, I think that would be a really cool thing if it was possible. And then once that, you know, if social restrictions got lifted further, you may consider allowing, you know, parents to begin with to attend as well, or other nuclear family at that point. And then just again streaming or doing it via a live stream, the graduation ceremony for everybody else. I can't envision right now a May 22nd complete lift of social distancing restrictions, but I can envision some lift of social distancing restrictions. So those are just possibilities. You know, worst case scenario, everybody just stays in a car and we just announce it, and I guess you drive up and get your diploma, but and we do it on the football field. And we could still live stream it and everybody would see it. Might be one more argument for the superintendent to get a Lamborghini, so that it looks looks really good. But so just kind of being flexible with that. I'd love to hear board members' thoughts, and Ken, if you wanted to call on Layson, if she's still listening too, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Layson, did you have anything? I'm
Did you have
unmuting the board members, but.
No, you said what you said during our meeting earlier.
Thanks, Layson.
Thank you, Layson. Thank you, Mr. Teagues. Anybody have comments or questions?
This class is pretty unique, so it would be kind of fun to have something unique for them.
Yeah. I did tell the class this year, and I meant it. I said, you know, as you get older and older, the graduating years of all your different students kind of meld together, and you end up like counting back from certain students or something. But I told them all, I will never forget the kids that graduated in the class of 2020. I mean, it'll be permanently ingrained in my mind.
I think whatever we decide to end up doing for graduation can be significant. I was impressed you know, the drive-by thing we did with the horn honking the other night. That was real emotional for me. I don't know about you guys, but it's like I almost had to pull over. But so I think that we can, you know, build that into whatever we do.
Yeah.
And when now you just want like to get comments from the board as over till the next board meeting, or
Yeah, I mean,
how'd you
if-
want to solicit that?
I mean, I don't know if anybody was, I told the senior kids, ultimately, you know, when I think about graduation, a lot of times seniors have a tendency to think, well, it's just about me. And they're definitely an important part of it, but the graduation that's a lot of things. Graduation is also about a community who for the last 13 years has passed a $400,000 to $500,000 levy to support these kids. And graduation is about the parents who have, you know, for the last 18 years done everything they could to make these kids have a successful future. So, you know, sometimes when it's live and in person, we sit down with the seniors and say, you know, graduation, yes, it's because of you, but graduation is for so many other people besides you too. And so, you know, I think that's important. I guess as far as the board, if the board, and I told the kids, it ultimately is going to be, you know, the board and my decision about how we do this, consulting with lots of people. If there was any discussion about how the board might think it would be better to delay it to later or do something else like that, then certainly this would be the time to do it, because the next time we will meet will be May 11th, barring a special meeting, which is only 11 days before graduation. What I would kind of, I guess, like to hear, and maybe the seniors too, is that the board is okay with just kind of sticking with the date, and then with myself and the other staff members here making the necessary adjustments to follow state proclamation or state guidance and federal and health district guidance as well. Oh, I got you unmuted, Carrie. Sorry.
Oh,
there you go.
yeah, totally okay with that, especially since that's what the students want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Okay.
Well, thank you all
Yep.
for your work, and Mr. Teagues, Mrs. Mossman. I hope you'll pass on to the staff and faculty how much we appreciate all their hard work in these unusual times.
Absolutely.
Because it certainly is appreciated. I know that the students and parents feel the same.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no more comments or questions, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I just ask a quick question back
bet,
on that driver's ed, Sean?
Yeah.
So Serene missed it by 1 month to the day.
Okay.
So with any of the changes, is there any possibility of her getting in this year if things get pushed out a bit?
That is a good question.
Okay. Yeah, just go ahead. Yeah.
So a lot of it has to do, and I mean, there's probably other people, because anytime you pick a cut date, it's like, then there's another person. But
Right.
so there's other people that might be interested in that. I don't know, perhaps with this waiver, there's that potential that as long as you don't start your driving before that day. I had some questions, and I haven't found out yet about, like, if they're not issuing new driver's license and they're giving us all a waiver on that for a while, how are these kids even supposed to get in and get a permit yet?
Yeah.
And so we could start it, but if they didn't get their permit before now, which none of them would have, what are we supposed to do with that? Can we start our class or not? And so I think we're going to have to follow up and kind of get some more guidance on that.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we'll go from there. The other thing that we've done to kind of make it work for families and stay in competition with what the private sector can do is be able to occasionally have kids take it online and then just provide the driving instruction at a later time too, if we get like a group of 2 or 3 kids. So there's lots of possibilities there.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. I noticed on your report, Mr. Teagues, you had other considerations from the board. So I thought I'd quickly share. This is annual conference week for U of I, and I have like a lifetime appointment as the hospitality chair. So Wednesday night, I'm going to conduct a online Zoom happy hour with about 100 people. So we'll see how that goes. But we have a plan to make it some fun. Everybody's trying to adapt as we go along, and it's a challenge for everyone. But anyway, thank you, board. Any more comments, questions? Thank you, everyone who's here. Entertain a motion to adjourn then. Oh, Jackie, did you have something? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Polly moves to adjourn.
Thanks, Polly. Second?
I'll second it, Carrie.
Carrie, second it. We'll just say a motion by acclamation. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Everyone have a good night, good week. And
Hey, a big shout out to Marcy, who's kind of the silent hero on the other end, taking notes on all this. So,
yes, thank you,
Yeah,
Marcy.
thanks, Marcy.
all right.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Night.